Hi there. Welcome to Your Aha Life, the podcast, for those who want more for their lives, more joy, more purpose, and more fulfillment. I'm your host, Tanya Harris Cornelius. In each episode, I will bring you stories of insight and inspiration to help you craft the life you dream of living, your aha life. After listening to today's podcast, follow me over to my private Facebook group, the AHA Community, and on Instagram at tanya.yourahalife, and we'll continue the conversation. Now let's get started. Hello, this is Tanya. Welcome back to Your AHA Life. I have with me Maggie Dong. Did I say that right, Maggie?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Well, I have Maggie with me, and we're going to be talking about the 4 areas of fitness or well being. And before I get into that, I'm going to read Maggie's bio, and then she and I are going to jump right into conversation. So, Maggie is a podcaster, a healer, fitness and life coach, and a channeler. I think that's interesting. We'll have to talk about that just a little bit today, Maggie. Maggie helps people master their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual fitness so that they can raise their consciousness and live with fulfillment. Maggie started her personal development journey when she had an eating disorder after losing her mom. When she finally reached her health and fitness goals, she noticed that something was still missing from her life. After experiencing more personal growth and her own spiritual awakening, Maggie realized that in order to be truly fulfilled, one must focus on these 4 areas: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual fitness, which is what we're talking about today. Miss any of these areas, Maggie says, and we'll find ourselves constantly looking for external things to fill an internal void that cannot be filled. Maggie's mission is to help people develop themselves in these 4 areas so that they can become masters of their realities and live with fulfillment. Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot right there. It's so wonderful, Maggie. So happy to have you here on your AHA Life today. How's it going?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great.
Great. So I want to just jump in because you are now, all this fitness, but that's not where you started. As you talk about in your bio, you went through a journey, and that journey with eating disorders, losing your mom, just a whole journey that has brought you to where you are today. Why don't you share with our listeners a little bit about what that journey was like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say my personal development and fitness journey started around the time when my mom passed away. So that was when I was 16. I lost her to breast cancer. And my dad at the time, he had already been incarcerated for around 2 years. So all of a sudden, I needed to take responsibility for my life because I had no other choice. There was no one else to help me figure it out. It was just all up to me. And I was sitting in that rock bottom space for a while, blaming life for being so unfair and asking myself, why can't I just have my high school senior year like the other kids? Why
Yeah.
did this have to happen? And in that space, I realized that no one was going to come to save me. And that person that was waiting for to save me was actually me. And I needed to step up and I needed to start healing myself so that I can create the life that I want to live. So I did sit in that eating disorder, depression, anxiety for a while because I didn't know how to deal with losing my mom and all of that was going on. But when I finally made the decision to start changing my circumstances, that's when I started my personal development journey. I started getting into the gym and creating this healthy lifestyle because with my eating disorder, I really wasn't working out or exercising. I was just restricting myself with food a lot.
Right.
But I wanted to get to a place where I was exercising for my health, for my own benefit, and eat in a way that feels good to my body. So that's what I did with my physical body. But as you kind of mentioned earlier, after I got to that point of physical health, I realized that there is so much more to life than just how I look and this physical body. So that's when I dived into the other areas of fitness, the mental, emotional, and spiritual. And that's what I help people with today.
Yeah, so there's still quite a bit to unpack just in that opening. You said, your mom, passed away, and you were just 16 years old, and your dad was incarcerated. So you were kind of on your own. And you said, you had this realization, this is your aha life, right? So you had this realization that no one was there to save you, that you would have to basically save yourself. And what did I want to just go right there? What did that feel like?
Yeah, it was a very difficult realization for me to come to because all of my life I had other people to be there for me to help me, which we need people to be there for
Yes.
us.
Yes.
And I was never put in that position where I needed to step up in this whole other way because I could always go to my mom, or even before my dad was incarcerated, I could go to him for certain things. But when I didn't have either of them, that's when I realized that I needed to become an adult way sooner than I was expecting.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so that's when I made the decision to start taking care of myself. And I also have a little brother. He is 5 years younger than me, so he was 11 back then.
Mm.
And that responsibility was also kind of on me.
Yeah. So you're right. You had to grow up really fast. But just listening to you, Maggie, and I know we've talked one other time, and then we've traded some emails and messages. There's such wisdom, and you're still a really young woman, in your life. But this is, I guess, it tells us when we go through a lot, it forces us to grow up a lot sooner than perhaps as we would want, as you said. So you have such wisdom. So you started working out and taking care of your physical body, but you realized that there was still this void, there was still something more, and you went on this spiritual journey. You want to tell us a little bit about what that is was like for you?
Yeah, and thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. And my spiritual awakening, we really started, I would say, early last year actually, because before that, I was working on a lot of mindset, a lot of physical and emotional, but I felt like there was still something else that I was still missing because we're here for a much greater purpose than just working out and losing weight and paying bills and entertaining
Yeah.
ourselves. There's a greater purpose. And that spiritual awakening really gave me the opportunity to realize why I'm really here. And my spiritual awakening started kind of with manifestation. And I think that's where a lot of people start um, with that realization that we can actually manifest our realities. And when I heard about that, all of a sudden I just developed this great interest into what else am I not seeing? What else am I missing that's out there? And that's when I started diving into this deep, deep rabbit hole. And once you get into it, you can't get out.
Now, you said the manifestation. So, my kind of, journey into manifestation is, our thoughts are powerful, number one. So, and, you know, we also, our words are powerful, in terms of all of this is energy. We are energy and they carry energy, and because they are energy they can vibrate and send vibrations out into the world, and we attract what those things that we are emitting, that energy that we emit is attracting to us. Is that, so I want to make this practical for people who may not follow that along, is that our words are powerful. If we say if we say we're confident, just put it as simple as that. If we say we're confident going into this job interview, we're confident that we're going to get this position, and we speak those words, we our words then turn to actions, and our actions reverberate, so that we have a greater chance of receiving that job that we then thought, spoke, and acted toward. And so we are able to manifest our goals and our dreams in that way. That's my understanding. What would you add to that, or how would you describe it?
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you on what you said. And, manifestation at the beginning, I thought it was me asking the universe for what I wanted and it will be delivered. And,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of people out there talking about if you just ask, it will get delivered. If you just say what you want, it's going to get delivered. But I had to realize that just by saying you want something and just by thinking a certain things, like you said, thoughts are so powerful. Whatever we think, it's going to manifest into our reality. But that thought has to be backed by certainty. So if we just think that I am so confident that I'm going to get this, but we don't actually believe it, we still have those
Mm-hmm.
subconscious doubts in the back of our minds, then it's not going to manifest because that thought alone doesn't have enough power to actually create the reality that you want. So, in order to manifest something, we have to actually believe that is going to happen. And just saying a couple affirmations is not enough to
Okay.
manifest something into our reality.
What about those? I mean, we're going down this path, and I'm going to bring us back, but I'm interested in this because I think this is what definitely in the personal development space, right? We talk about affirmations. I have affirmation cards all on my desk. Just affirmations and saying these positive words. I have it on an app and all of that. And I think those things are great. I think we need to feed our minds, our spirits with positivity. But to your point, just saying the words, if we are not believing them, or our actions are negating those words, then it's not likely the thing that we are hoping for, if you will, is going to come our way. um yeah, so I think you make a really good point there.
And our thoughts do create so much. We have to start realizing that our minds are so powerful and we create everything from thoughts.
Mm,
And what we have to start realizing is that if we are constantly thinking, like you said, a lot of negative thoughts, a lot of toxic thoughts going on in our heads, it's going to manifest into our reality. But if we want to create something different, it starts with, yes, changing our thoughts, changing our minds, but we have to back that with the power. So, There's something that I posted the other day on my social media, that the origin of our creation is our mind. So our minds create everything. But the power behind the creation is our heart. So you have to back that thought with your heart, with that love energy that is sitting in your heart. That's going to back up the thoughts that's actually going to manifest into our reality.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah. So we started talking. You stopped. I stopped you right at manifestation. So that was the beginning. You said of your kind of spiritual journey. And so when did you start putting all of this together and say, actually, your total fitness, your total well-being is, physical, mental, emotional. Am I got this right? And spiritual. When did you start putting all of that together?
I would say around the middle of last year, I started realizing that if I just focus on one area, I'm gonna be missing something because this is a holistic transformation that we're all
Yeah.
going through. If we just focus on the mind and neglect the body or our souls, then we're still going to try to fill that void within ourselves. And I did that for a long time. My eating disorders were me filling a void with food and how my body looks, because I thought that if I just looked better, I would finally be happy because I wasn't happy already. And I used relationships too. I thought that if I just get into this relationship where somebody can come love me the way that I want to be loved, then I will finally be happy. But using these external things to fill that void is a guarantee that I'm never going to be happy, because I'm always going to be depending on something or someone else outside of myself to fill that void. And if that thing is taken away from me, let's say my body doesn't look the way that I want it to look, then all of a sudden my happiness is affected. And if I'm that easily affected, then I don't have control over my reality because I'm being controlled by all of these external circumstances. So that's when I put the four pieces together, that we have to come to balance within ourselves.
Yeah. And I love the word that you just used, balance, because I mean, we use the word balance, we think about work-life balance, but we're talking about whole life balance today. And um, and when any part of that is, like I think you said in your bio as I was reading, when any one of those is missing, you are out of balance and it will impact your sense of fulfillment. So let's fast forward a little bit. You work with clients now on life coaching, on fitness coaching, and how do you work with them in identifying and applying these four areas to their overall fitness?
Yeah, so I used to do one-on-one coaching. I no longer coach one-on-one. But when I did do the one-on-one coaching, I realized that a lot of these subconscious patterns that we hold come from our childhood and the traumas that we've
Mm,
gone through, and even past lives. I have dived into my past lives and other people's past lives, and it all adds up to where we are now and the behaviors that we have. And a lot of the times we're not even aware of why we are the way that we are and why we do certain things. But once we come to that awareness and realize that, oh, this is where I learned this from, this is where I picked this up, then that's when we can start changing it if we don't want to, or if we don't want to keep it going.
yeah.
So I feel like awareness is key. Having that awareness, it's 80% of the equation.
Yeah, I would agree. I tell you, they say the first step of any personal transformation is self awareness. Without it, we're not conscious enough to know what to change, why to change, and all of that. So as you are, kind of at your place, at the place you are now, what is different about Maggie than, you know, say even a year ago, a year and a half ago?
Yeah, I mean, so much can change in 1 year.
Mm. Well, tell me about it. We've been in this pandemic for a year, so that's opportunity for transformation right there.
Oh, 100%. And before this whole pandemic started, I was still in college. So since then, a lot has changed. I was in college in my second year and studying cognitive science, but last June, after my second year of school, I decided to drop out of college. And in August, I moved to San Diego, which is where I am now. And I don't regret a single bit of that decision because I I realized that when we truly follow our hearts, follow our intuitions, and allow that to guide us, even when it doesn't make sense, it leads us to where we need to go. Because
Mm.
before I dropped out of college, I was so scared. I was thinking, what are people going to say? What if I drop out and this doesn't work out and I have to go back to school? And so many what ifs. But these what ifs are just these stories that I'm telling myself in my head. But once we get out of those stories, there is so much freedom in just choosing to follow our hearts and allowing that to guide us to where we need to be.
Yeah. So, and it takes a lot of courage, to listen to our own voices inside. Some people say that's the easiest thing to do, right? Uh, you know, because that's where all the answers really reside. That's where that inner wisdom is. We are actually making it harder for ourselves by listening to all these external voices of, what we should be doing and all the expectations. But that had to, again, that had to be, kind of a big step for you. How do you, kind of go against, I would say go against the grain, because you're still such a young emerging leader in this space, and you're doing incredible work. You are sharing your insights with so many on helping people, I'm looking at this, master their reality, really, you know dig underneath to understand their higher selves and all of that. And I'm just wondering, so, kind of, where do you go next with this? What is Maggie doing today?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because I have learned to let go of a lot of the control that I was holding on to because
Mm.
before all of this, I had this very, very rigid plan of what my future was going to look like. I thought that I was going to finish college, I was going to get that degree, and then go on and do so many things. But as you can see, things have changed very quickly. I can drop that entire plan in a single moment and choose an entirely different path. So nowadays, I don't really have one specific goal that I want to achieve. I don't have an outcome that I'm particularly desiring. I really am just focusing on taking it step by step instead of looking so much long term, like what am I going to do in 2 months or a year or 5 years. I stopped worrying about that. I just want to enjoy
And how
what's
does that feel, Maggie? How does I mean, because you and there's so much that I relate to, that you're saying, but then there are certain parts of it that I'm like, oh my God, I could never do that. I could never, just go day by day. I mean, of course, I meditate and I say, "Oh, you just be present." But I am a planner too. I am, one that, thinks ahead. And I think probably, for those who are listening who are a bit more like me, you are definitely a flow person. And so, how do you? I mean, how do you do that?
Yeah, I used to be very structured. I used to plan everything out. My Google Calendar was locked down to the minute. I would even put in my rest times on there. It was so, so rigid. And I had to play around with it and see where that balance point is. I mean, nowadays I still have certain things on my calendar. I didn't just drop my entire schedule altogether and just have no structure. It's about that balance and finding what works for each person, because what works for me might not work for other people and vice versa. But I like having the structure that kind of guides me to where I may need to go, but I don't have an attachment to that schedule. So if for whatever reason I don't follow the schedule today, I don't feel like it, that's okay. I just let it flow. So I have the structure, but then I also don't force myself to follow that.
Yeah. So I think, the way that the decisions, the choices that you have made and are making with your life could be quite instructive, if you will, or helpful, because a lot of times, our emerging leader talent, right? Our emerging leaders who are maybe just beginning careers, or maybe they're like you, they are or were in school, and they feel this pressure all the time to be on and to perform, and um, have a hard time, setting boundaries, and are always, walking on the edge of burnout. Um, what would you say to those individuals, and advice would you give to them? Because you've obviously made some intentional choices to not walk that path. And so, what would be some advice you would give to those individuals?
Yeah, I would say always come back to yourself, because
Hmm.
the reason that we get so burnt out or we're so tired, we feel like our boundaries are violated, is because we're focusing so much on the things that are outside of ourselves. So we're focusing on work, we're maybe focusing on school and focusing on other people. And those things are great, but when do we focus on ourselves? Because at the end of the day, this is where we return to. And a lot of people forget that. They get so caught up in the things that they're doing and their relationships and what other people are up to, but they don't return to themselves. And this is why they get burnt out, because they don't check in with what their bodies, what their minds, what their souls really need. So I would say the number one thing is just always bring it back to ourselves.
And when you say bring it back to ourselves, is there what do you mean by that? And how would someone, come back to self?
Yeah, it's by realizing that at the end of the day, this is what we have. So from my story and my experience, I learned this firsthand, that the things that are outside of me can be taken away in an instant. I can lose all of this right now, but what's real behind all of this is myself. At the end of the day, I'm always going to have myself, whether I have these external things or not, whether I lose relationships or not. And if we have an attachment to anything outside of ourselves and we get so caught up in these attachments, then when they're taken away, that's when we feel lost, because we
Mm,
never truly realize who we are other than the things that we attach ourselves to.
yeah. Yeah, I've read a lot about, attachment being kind of you know, one of the core reasons for suffering too, right? I think the Buddhist and maybe Taoism, other spiritual teachings talk about, attachment and learning how to let go, because all things are impermanent too. And so if you're attaching yourself to something and it goes away because it's impermanent, it can be a source of suffering. So it is learning to, not attach yourself, and learning also acceptance, right? Acceptance of things, particularly things that you cannot change. um, do you have a practice? So when we talk about physical, I get physical, right? This is, we take care of our physical bodies. We go work out. We might do Pilates. We might do some yoga. We might run, walk, swim, whatever. I get the physical fitness. Um, Emotional fitness. What's How do you kind of work on the emotional fitness part?
Yeah, emotional fitness, it's about coming to that balance with our emotions because what I've experienced and what I've seen a lot of people experience is they're either suppressing their emotions and not allowing anything out and thinking that they're not supposed to feel sad, they're not supposed to cry, and just suppressing all of that energy within their body. And that's not healthy. But then on the other side of it, it's just letting everything flow out without limits, without boundaries, and almost just like unleashing all their emotions onto everyone and everything. But that's also unhealthy. So it's about finding that balance in between, allowing your emotions to flow freely, but at the same time, not to the point where your emotions are controlling you, not to the point where you cry over everything and you don't have control over this energy, because at the end of the day emotions are just energy in motion. That's why they're called emotions.
Energy and motion. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the energy that's free flowing in our body, but we have to be able to control and direct that energy.
Hmm. And so, as you were speaking, I was thinking, okay, so how do you do that? And one of the things that I was thinking about is probably journaling. Um, but I don't know how else you would recommend on the emotional, kind of fitness part. But journaling for sure, I would think I journal most mornings, not every morning. And that it's amazing sometimes what just comes out, as you're journaling.
Yeah, I love journaling. It's incredible for processing our thoughts, our emotions. And I also love just sitting in meditation. Sometimes I sit in meditation and something comes up and I start crying. I just let it happen.
Mm,
I don't judge myself for it. I don't restrict myself. I just let it happen so that after this energy is released, I'm done with it.
yeah, yeah. So I think things that allow us to, like you say, express our emotions and, get them out on the table, and not suppress them, because you're right, when they are just bottled up inside of us, it also then impacts every other part of us, our physical bodies as well. So let's talk about mental fitness. I think some of the same things like journaling could also be mental, but what are some other ways in which people can really focus in on mental fitness?
Yeah, it's noticing our limiting beliefs because we all have them, but we can rewrite them. When we have that awareness, we can then change the story that we tell ourselves. And when we change the story, that's when we change our lives, because our lives are just a bunch of pieces of different stories that are put together to form this whole life that's in front of us. So it's whatever the story we're telling ourselves in our minds, that's going to manifest into our reality. So if we want a different reality, it starts by changing our mindset and our thoughts.
Mm. Yeah. You went somewhere totally different than where I was going to go, Maggie. I love it because I was saying, okay, mental fitness. Oh, reading, reading, podcast, listening to podcast and, personal development kind of things, learning new skills, those kinds of things that keep our minds sharp. But you went also to those limiting beliefs and you're right. We all have those little narrations inside of our heads. Um, and I love how you say change the story. So, do you have, tips for listeners who perhaps do have these limiting beliefs, these beliefs that, you know, um, say they can't or they're not enough in some way, right? How do you suggest they expose them, number one, become aware of them, and then rewrite those stories?
Yeah, I would say a lot of it is self-reflection
Mm,
because we have to almost be able to call ourselves out when we have those thoughts, which can be difficult, but it gets easier over time when we start noticing and catching ourselves when we have certain thoughts. That's when in the moment we can change it. Because if we don't even catch ourselves or we don't try catching ourselves, then they're just going to keep on running and running and running in our heads. So it's by catching ourselves. And then I like to ask myself, is this true? Whatever I'm
mm.
saying, is this actually true? Or is this a fear-based story that is in my head that I'm making up?
Yeah, great question. Is this true? And I had another guest, Dr. Emmy Estacio. She says TLC. Is it true? Is it logical? And is it constructive? If it's not true, if it's not logical, if it's not constructive, like, you know, push it out. So I've always remembered that the TLC that she left me with. I'm not sure if that's her invention or if whatever, but it works. It works. And then our last one, which we've been talking about, we started talking about the spiritual fitness at the very beginning. Is there anything else that you would say, hey, if you really want to work on your spiritual fitness, here might be some things you think about or things that to do?
Yeah, so I feel like the spiritual aspect of fitness is less about thinking and less about doing. It's more about being. It's
Mm,
simply just being in the present moment. Because when we're stuck in our heads, when we're thinking about the next thing, we're thinking about the past, we're not fully here because our minds will wander anywhere but this present moment. And to access the spiritual realms of life, of this universe, it's really by getting present because everything happens right here and right now. There is no past, there is no future. Those are all stories and illusions that we create in our minds. And this present moment, when we're fully here, there's nothing to worry about, there's nothing to stress about, there's no anxiety because everything is just peaceful and calm. And when we can truly be present for all of it, that's when we're at peace.
yeah, so nice. Inner peace. Inner peace is what most of us, long for and are striving to have. But the problem is we're striving, right, instead of just being. So this has been wonderful, and looking at, our whole being, our whole well-being in these, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual fitness. And I really appreciate, just your insights and you also sharing your journey to this. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with listeners and also ensure that listeners know how to find you.
Yeah, so I do have a podcast. It's called Mind Muscle Enlightenment. Is where I talk about the 4 areas of fitness and a lot of other stuff as well. Some of it might be a little out there, but that's the stuff that I like diving into.
We
And I'll
didn't get
just,
to the channeling this time. We'll have to talk about that next time.
oh, 100%. And I will just leave with this, that everything that we experience in our lives, it's for our highest good. So even in the moment, if it might not seem like this is going anywhere, when we're struggling, it feels like everything is falling apart. But realize that everything happens for a reason. And in the future, at some point, we're going to look back and realize how grateful we are for the way that things happened. And all of these adversities, I mean, in those moments, I wanted to give up so badly. I wanted to just drop everything and throw it in the towel because that's the easy thing to do. But I'm glad I didn't, because if
I'm
I
glad you
did,
didn't. I'm
think,
glad you didn't. You're such a insightful soul, um, and sharing this with others is really, it's really magical, really really nice. So you can connect with Maggie at Maggie Dong, right? That's your Instagram
my Instagram is Maggie Dong underscore.
underscore. Okay, Maggie Dong underscore. And Mind Muscle Enlightenment. That's your podcast, you said? Yeah. All right. So I have
Yeah,
a
that's my
final
podcast.
question. I'm sorry. Did I cut you off? What did you say? Yeah.
No, no, no. Go
Oh,
ahead.
okay. Okay. So
Go ahead.
your aha life. So I always end with this question. What does that mean to you? What does your aha life mean to Maggie?
I love that question. Yeah, so it means that I am the creator of my reality. And if I don't like something, I have the power to change that 100%. And instead of allowing things to happen to me and playing the victim, I realized that I can take responsibility for all of it. And when I do take responsibility, that's when I have full control. And not just taking responsibility for the things that are great. And, when things are going well, it's easy to say, I love my life. Things are going so well. I can take responsibility for that. But how do we take that responsibility for the moments where we maybe don't enjoy the adversities we're experiencing? But it's in those moments we get the most growth. So it's really about embracing all of it and realizing that if I don't like something, I can change it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good, so rich in that. Thank you so much, Maggie, for sharing again your journey with us, your wisdom with us, your insights, and such a joy. And you'll have to come back.
Yeah, we'll talk about the channeling next time.
Yeah, and we'll talk about channeling next time. I'm so interested in that. All right. Thank you so much. And thank you, listeners, for joining in to your aha life. We'll be back next week. Thank you for joining me. Come back again for another episode that will inspire you to live the life you dream about and the life that you're meant to live. Now head on over to my private Facebook group, the AHA Community, and to Instagram at tanya.yourahalife, and let's continue the conversation. I'm Tanya Harris Cornelius, and this is Your AHA Life.